Okay, now we're going to move on to our next topic, which is comics. And essentially, what we're going to do is we're going to each go around and talk about what we're reading and also what we would like to read. So, Swade, what do you got for us?
I've been reading, and I've got it right here, actually. I've been reading Deadly Class. I've got this, and I've got an entire stack. Pardon me turning around as we're doing this, but I've got an entire stack of Deadly Class.
Wow.
It's essentially this kid that, kind of a troubled kid, and he gets found by these students for a school of assassins, essentially. A school for assassins and hitmen and murderers, and it's a high school, and they just go to school. I mean, it's almost like a very Japanese anime-esque, how it's based around a high school and kids that have powers. But none of these kids are really super powered or anything. They're just very talented at killing. And it's just a brilliant. I think it's very much akin to more of an art piece than it is a storytelling mechanism, because you look at some of the pages and the way they display the story.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's one page where they go to a music festival, and when they're at the music festival, the whole 2 pages is a crowd. It's just a crowd photo, and it's from like almost like a drone shot of a crowd. Mm-hmm. And inside of that, there's little tiny boxes that you're jumping to that are pieced into the crowd, and it's what's happening to them in those boxes and those spots in the crowd.
Huh.
So a guy here trying to sell them drugs, and here a guy swings at them. Here a guy does this, but it's just spread out across this page, and it doesn't follow a timeline of when those things happen. It's just where they happened for them. It's really interesting, and wow. they come at paneling a comic book just a completely different way. I freaking love it. It's so much fun. It's fun to read, and they're easy to get through. I got through the first graphic novel. I got through it in 45 minutes.
Wow!
And you could really sit down in an afternoon and go through all. I think I have 8. I think I have 8 editions, but you can go through them in an afternoon, and I recommend them. I always recommend them when people talk about comics with me, because I'm not as well versed in like individual comics. I love graphic novels. Like I love Watchmen before Watchmen and after Watchmen.
Yeah.
So that's where my loyalty sits, sort of, is in graphic novels. So Deadly Class is just, I mean, a freaking work of art. Check it out for sure.
The concept kind of reminds me of the Umbrella Academy, if you're familiar with that.
It is.
I was about to say that, actually, yeah.
When I went to a comic store on the corner from me. They used to be called Atomic. They've changed it now, but I went there. It was a few months ago. It's been recent that I've been reading it, but it was a few months ago when I bought them. I went in and I said I'd like to get Umbrella Academy, and he said we are sold out. He said everybody's sold out. It's on back order, and I said, oh well, I guess I'll head out. And he goes, hang on, and he stopped me, and he handed me the first issue of Deadly Class. He said, take this home. You live around the corner, right? I said, yeah. He said, take this home. If you like it, come back and pay me for it. If you don't, come back and drop it back in. I said, okay. So I brought the first one home. I went back the next day and bought 8 more.
So did you like it?
No, not at all. No, I absolutely loved it. It's Deadly Class is one of the best. I haven't watched the show either. It's a TV show, I heard, and I haven't taken the time to watch it because I'm nervous that they won't do it as well as I see it in my head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that makes sense. Yeah. Who's the publisher on it? Is it Dark Horse?
I believe it's Image. Yeah, it's Image.
Oh, Image. Oh, okay. Cool.
Yeah.
So we talked about Image in episode 1, and kind of seeing what they evolved to is really interesting. Starting out with Youngblood, which is what I talked about, Spawn, which is about what I'm going to get into, and then eventually Walking Dead, Saga, Deadly Class, Kick-Ass, and all these other titles that Image has kind of evolved into, less superhero and more character story driven, pieces that it's really interesting. And I assume, like you were saying, that that is a more art driven piece rather than a storytelling kind of book.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, the story is excellent and the characters are super well developed, and like they're some of the best specific individual characters that I've seen in comics, but the art is what keeps pulling me back into it, because every time I'm like reading a panel, I sit there and stare at it for a couple of minutes and just look at it. And that got me too, because I also have Umbrella Academy.
Yeah,
that got me with it got me with Umbrella Academy too. The art style, that almost black and white of Umbrella Academy, but Deadly Class is like Umbrella Academy on acid. It's just so colorful and crazy. In one part of the first graphic novel, the main character takes, I think he drops acid actually, and the next 2 pages are an acid trip. So it's just panels that don't make any sense, and they're like in these weird, strange art styles. Let me see. Actually, I'd love to just pop it open and show it to you for one second, because I have it right here on hand. So to show you those couple of panels would just blow your mind. But yeah, it really dives into things that I'm interested in as far as storytelling, where you build a group of characters instead of just individually laying out these stories. You're building the whole group of characters. These 2 panels, I don't know if you can see that. Those 2 panels don't make any sense. It's just like,
wow.
Like in here, these are all faces that he's making, and here's like random stuff, and down here is like none of it really makes any sense right in here, and the art style just flips on its ear.
I love the color palette.
Yeah, it's this super vibrant. It's so cool. Here's the one that's like that's a crowd, and each one of those little panels is things they're doing inside of the crowd. I mean, they just come at comic strips as a different form or medium, and they do little things that are very cinematic, like this is the actual act that happened, and they pull back and they pull back again and they pull back again.
Wow.
So it's
innovative stuff.
Do what?
Innovative stuff, for sure.
Yeah, it's done as you would shoot something, as you would film it. It's almost like if Edgar Wright made a comic book.
Nice.
That's awesome. I'm interested. I'm gonna go buy the first volume at least, and then dive from there. But if you liked it, I'm probably gonna go ahead and buy the whole thing.
Yeah, just go buy the first one, and you'll buy the rest of them. I promise.
Yeah, well,
find it on Amazon. You probably find it on Amazon, eBay, or any kind of outlet.
It's although it is a TV show, it's not overtly popular. It's not like an extremely popular series like Umbrella Academy was, and so you can get them. I mean, they're out there. They're definitely in stock wherever you go for your comics. So yeah, I always would recommend Deadly Class. And I also, not to make my little section go too long, also been trying to find 3 Jokers, which is like in the Batman universe, and it's 3 different Jokers set in 3 different time frames and 3 different styles, and it looks really interesting. So I want to sit down with that also. But once I get that, I'll pop back on here and talk about it.
Nice. Yeah.
There you go.
That'd be great, because I know your relationship with the Joker is really interesting, as far as like how you've consumed, the material over years, and your take on the character and how it's been thrown around in different ways. And especially in comics, like there's already so many Jokers in the movies, but thinking about how many Jokers there have been in the comics and how many different approaches there have been, there's just so many to choose from, and everybody can have their own favorite Joker. Just from the comics, and they go far beyond what the movies have done.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
For sure.
All right, Lane, what do you got for us?
Well, I'm going to talk about a subject that I also talked about last week, but I don't care because I love it a lot. It's a little different though this time. So it's actually it's Neil Gaiman's The Sandman. But the twist is, it's actually not. Yeah, okay, so there you go. There's Lucifer, which, as we all know, is the Netflix show, which is amazing. But this time, actually, about 4 or 5 days ago, they released a little article about they're coming out with an Audible adaptation of the first 3 volumes of Sandman. So yeah, I thought it was going to be a movie. I got super excited, but then as I read more, I was like, well, it's only the Audible adaptation, but that's okay. That's very cool because the voice cast that they got for it is a bunch of great voice actors. Let me read some off here. They got James McAvoy, which that's not bad, right?
He's top tier.
Right, yeah. Taron Egerton, I don't know how to pronounce that. Yeah, he played, Kingsman, which, I love Kingsman. I love
Rocket Man. Yeah.
I've seen Rocket Man. Amazing. Who else? Michael Sheen, Andy Serkis.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I mean, not too shabby. So it's as of right now, it's supposed to release July 15th, and it basically is going to cover preludes, nocturnes, and the Doll's House in Dream Country. So I'm really excited to hear that. Like I said, it'll kind of bring the novel to life with the voice actors. And I wondered, because I was like, it's a really hard comic series to bring to the TV. Lucifer did it really well as a TV show, but I was like, man, that's a hard movie to try to bring forth to life, because the comics, I wish I had one near me, but I don't think I do. But it's just so, I don't even know how to describe it. It's just all over the place. Like the dialogue with the artistry on it, the illustrations, it's just, the storytelling's amazing, which is one thing that really drew me in. But yeah, I mean, maybe down the road, I'm crossing my fingers. Hopefully they'll come out with something on the big screen. But yeah, that's something I like listening to podcasts and just listening to storytelling. So that's something that would be really cool to hear if anyone's into that. I know, Swayde, you're probably going to want to listen to that, because I know you like storytelling a whole lot. So yeah, that's something to check out. So yeah, July 15th, it'll be coming out.
So are these new Sandman universe novels?
No, they're not new. They've been released. This is actually, because they revamped it about this time last year, and they split it off into Lucifer, House of Dreams, Books of Magic, and The Dreaming. It's not based off this one. This is the originals that were released, I don't know how long ago. It was a while back. So they're covering the real original stories, not the most recent reviving of all his novels or all his comics. Yeah. So, but still, I mean, regardless, great storytelling. So it'll actually be cool to kind of go back and kind of revisit some of those old comics. I think that'd be cool, and hear it brought to life with their voice acting. So I think it's a unique concept that's kind of cool. And just easy. You don't even have to read anything, just listen to it. I mean, if you wanted to, you could go ahead and buy it, or digitally download it and read along as the voice actors are going over it, to give you not only their interpretation of how the character sounds, but you can literally watch the illustrations and read along. So kind of like having subtitles to it. So I don't know. I think that might be something I'm going to delve into.
And that's under the DC Vertigo brand, correct?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, DC Vertigo. So.
And that's kind of its own brand inside DC, where you've got Doom Patrol, you've got I can't remember off the top of my head, but other titles like that are just way out there, like Sandman and Doom Patrol for sure. If you've never checked out DC Vertigo at all, I highly recommend you check that out for those listening. But yeah, that's a great selection.
I pulled those 2 Lucifer comics up. I got those from a buddy of mine who's very close with one of the illustrators at Vertigo, and he sends him boxes of Vertigo comics. Wow. And he knew that I had gotten into Lucifer without knowing who Neil Gaiman was, and I just got into the show, and he gave me those two volumes of Lucifer, and I sat down and powered through them and loved them. But I just such great character building.
Mm-hmm.
Neil Gaiman
absolutely.
He crafts his characters.
So my comic that I'm going to talk about is a character from Image Comics. It was the second book released by Image Comics back in the early 90s. So they started out with Rob Liefeld's Youngblood series, which I talked a little bit about in episode 1. And I mentioned I wanted to kind of continue on and read all of basically the history of Image Comics, where it started with those original creators of Rob Liefeld, Todd McFarlane, who is the creator of Spawn, Jim Lee, and Eric Larson. So those guys basically founded Image Comics and changed the whole comic industry back in the early 90s. And so the book that I just started with is Spawn, and I right now only have 1 through 3 of the issues. That's as far as I've gotten. But the storytelling and the visual storytelling in just the first 3 issues hooked me completely. Like, I cannot wait to find issue 4, whether that's the physical or digital. I want to get into it. So basically, for those who don't know much about Spawn or the character, the series, basically it's a story about a guy named Al Simmons, and he was a CIA assassin who actually got killed while he was in the line of duty, which I haven't got to a point where they've fleshed that out yet, but that's kind of the overall idea, is that he died as a CIA assassin while he was working, and after he died, he made a deal with the devil to bring him back to life to see his wife again. And what happened was he kind of got tricked. So in order for him to come back to life, he had to give up his soul, which is, pretty familiar with that whole trope in story. But the interesting part is, when he came back to life, he came back as this Hellspawn character with the costume and this massive cape, which Todd McFarlane, like, he's known for his detailed art style. The kind of artwork that he does, it's like kind of like you were saying with Deadly Class. Each thread is like its own art piece in itself. Basically, to get back to that, he comes back to life as this Hellspawn, and the big thing is he doesn't remember anything about his life. So once he gives up his soul and comes back as this creature, Spawn, he doesn't remember anything. But what happens is, and what has happened so far in the first 3 issues, is he's slowly given memories from the devil about who he was, who his wife is, the people around him, his profession, and like in bits and pieces, and it's just tormenting him. His main priority is obviously his wife. That's what he came back for. And in the very first book, he realizes why he came back, and that was for his wife, but he didn't know her name. And so, like, that whole first issue was like him kind of coming to terms with the fact that he doesn't remember anything and that he's being tortured by the devil. But that's like one whole aspect, and that's and outside of that, he has this like kind of arch nemesis who's like this clown type character, but also kind of like a demon itself, called the Violator. And really creepy dude, but he kind of pops in and out and kind of messes with him as he's having all these realizations. And when he removes his mask, when Spawn removes his mask, he realizes his face is all mangled, and he's not the same person anymore. He can't even like relate to humans, so he has to like hide in the shadows. He's very much a Batman-like character, but much darker, much more mature kind of writing. And then the Violator is a Joker-esque kind of character, but so much deeper and just much more cruel as a character. So their dynamic is really interesting because that, like I said, ultimately that's his supervillain. But the first 3 issues have hooked me because like I want to know more about this guy, because he still has the heart, the human aspect of him, but then he's also fighting crime and going after these people that he's noticing in the city that are doing some horrible things. But the way he's going about it is not necessarily something a superhero would do. So he's kind of like in this
An
great
anti-hero.
Yeah, he's definitely an anti-hero, but he's kind of battling this, like, I want to do good for people because that's my job that I just remembered that I had. But the way I'm going about it is very brutal. You know, it's like, do they deserve this kind of punishment? But am I doing good for these people that are being harmed? So there's that aspect of the story as well, of him kind of going back and forth, and then the violator will pop in and kind of like mess with him and be like, man, you destroyed those people, and just kind of making him feel bad, you know. But then him having that internal conflict is a really, really interesting piece. And like I said, from the outside looking in, I had no idea that this character was this layered and that the story was that interesting. But like I said, by issue 3, when he finally confronts the violator as, you know, as his realization that I'm this Spawn guy, I have a job now. I've been put back on this earth for a reason. And you find out along the way what happens with all of his past life things, and I don't want to give away any of those. But essentially, he has all these realizations. He's confronted by this nemesis, and now he has to make a decision of what kind of character he wants to be moving forward.
I saw the original Spawn movie back in like the 90s, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen that a few times, but I don't know how closely related it is to the comic. I don't know how accurate it is with the comic story. And I'd love to pick up a couple of issues and dive into it.
So I haven't seen the movie, and I purposely didn't watch it before the comic.
Yeah.
Same thing, there's also an animated series that was done through HBO around that same time in the early 90s, which is very well done, and highly recommend you check that out.
Yeah.
You can find it, I think it's on Amazon Prime for a limited time right now, but you could probably find it somewhere. But it's a really interesting approach. It's different from the comic, but it does take and pull a few different things. I heard the movie is kind of a rough adaptation of the comic. So reading the book will obviously put more context in what you've seen in the movie, but it goes so much deeper. Like I said, from my surface level knowledge of the character before I read the books, I kind of thought I knew, but then when I read these first 3 issues, I was hooked. And I'm like, I cannot wait to read the next one. From here, when I get to a point, I'd like to move on to some of the other early Image comic titles, like Savage Dragon, Wildcats, Stormwatch, like all these really like epic stories about these, you know, big heroes. But I thought this one was interesting in how it contrasted Youngblood as rather than like a big team Saturday morning cartoon style, as more of a character-driven piece, multi-layered and beautiful to look at. So if you get a chance to check out Spawn, I highly recommend it.
Yeah, I'll definitely look into it for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.